There's two truths in the world, okay? Never walk in a Target store wearing a red shirt, and never go against an Asian when it comes to math.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Get ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John, have you heard all these plans for the presidential candidates?
Oh, which ones? Can you be a little more vague?
Well, today, Kamala Harris is going to be working the drive-thru at Wendy's. Tonight, Donald Trump is going to be doing DoorDash. Tomorrow, Kamala Harris is going to be working at Waffle House. And tomorrow afternoon, Trump is going to be working at Freddy's. He's going to be working the inside counters. When you come up to place your order, is going to be Donald Trump in there.
Now, how do you feel as a White Castle partisan? How do you feel about them ignoring White Castle?
This whole thing, once again, you and I kid about this. Okay, let's do a crazy, weird scenario. Okay, yesterday, Donald Trump is shown on TV carjacking a car in downtown Miami with a gun to the person's head, and Kamala Harris is seen riding through San Francisco naked and throwing bricks at passerbys. And guess what? It's still tied, right?
It's still tied. And you know what? Because we learned, thanks to you yesterday, Brad, Kamala has the Canuck vote locked up. Like, if you're in Montreal and you're going to sneak across the border, maybe vote early, you're voting for Kamala because she's one of you.
I had a discussion yesterday with someone who did not believe that, and they said they were a listener to the show. I won't say who, and they got upset with me. They said, "There's no way." I sent her the copy of whatever it was. I think I even sent it to you, didn't you? The Montreal Gazette or whatever it was, and talked about, and even to the point where when there's a part of the story that talked about when she, if you know what we're talking about, the story is Kamala Harris never talks about that she spent 5 years in Canada. She graduated from a Canadian high school in Montreal, and yet nobody ever talks about that. And matter of fact, she was in Canada from she was for 4 or 5 years, and to the point where you figure that out. I think after she graduated, she moved back to the United States. But okay, let's say she was 18 when she graduated. Run 4 or 5 years previous to that puts her at 14 or 13 or 14. So it's to the point where she spent most of her pre or post-pubescent life in Canada, but nobody ever talks about that. And people, like I said, some of you, there's no way she was in Canada for 5 years. I got the stupid article talks about, and even to the point where when she got elected vice president, I think, what was it? I don't know if we talked about this yesterday, that the high school center, some kind of an honorary thing.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, whatever. Okay, that is John Combest. That's the voice you hear right there, and he works hard. He's like Donna Summer in the old days. He said, and the only problem is he's not a woman; he's a man. He works hard for the money, and what does he do every single day? He puts together a list of all the important things that you should be in tune to in the state of Missouri: government, politics, all that kind of stuff. Puts together a list. How many on the list today? You think? How many, just approximately?
Oh, I don't know. Probably about 24. Yeah.
So a quarter of a century worth of stuff, as far as quarter of a century, that would be like 25. Anyway, he puts together this list, puts it on his website, johncombest.com, COMBEST. We started out with this dude.
I'm Casey Kasem.
He comes in because what does he like to do?
Now on with a countdown.
Do countdowns. We start off with?
In third place,
all those Canucks coming across the border to vote for Kamala Harris. Let's say they come to Missouri. Great news for the Canucks, Brad. They can vote early starting today in Missouri. And that's our number 3 story. I would suggest folks go to Jason Rosenbaum's piece from St. Louis Public Radio, where Jason lays out all the polling places at which you can vote early in area counties, and also the benefits of voting early. Don't get trapped in an election day line, Brad. I know you're an election day guy. I know there's something special to you about voting on election day, but you're also the guy that likes to read a hard copy of a newspaper. I mean, how antiquated is that? Brad, get it out of the way. Go vote early. Pick up Jason Rosenbaum's. I guess you can't pick it up. Go read Jason Rosenbaum's story, and you can find out where to vote in St. Charles County, St. Louis County, St. Louis City, all the local areas, Brad. Are you going to vote early, or are you going to do the election days thing?
John, there's a third choice.
Oh, what's that? Not vote at all.
Yes, I'm not voting. I'm not voting anymore.
Oh, now are you being serious or are you yanking our chain today?
No, I'm serious. I've decided that I'm going to be like Jamie Dupree. Jamie Dupree was a very respected journalist. I think he's still, and it's a sad story. He worked for Cox newspaper group and also did stuff on all their TV and radio stations. He was stationed in D.C., and how I became aware of him was he was on Neil Bortz's talk show, and very, very, very down the middle. I don't think I've ever heard a journalist who's been as far as down the middle as he was. And one day, Neil Bortz quizzed him down in this, and come on, Jamie, tell us how you really feel. Tell us you're Republican, Democrat. He says, I don't even vote anymore because of the fact that I think it's wrong that as a journalist, I have a preference. Now, there's a story we'll get to later this morning, which is pretty interesting because it's the exact opposite. But I've decided I'm not voting anymore. I'm just not voting anymore.
Wow. Now, you say that, Brad, but you do inject yourself in stories like, I don't know, speaking of Jason Rosenbaum, you go to events where Rosenbaum's at, and you wear a pink vest and you hop in the background of pictures to get your mug on St. Louis Public Radio.
Well,
I mean, you can't say you're completely disassociated from the political process.
That story was, what's her name? Trisha Burns, was that her name? Isn't she the state rep?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, that was a story that I saw. You know, there was a press release on that she was having that event out there, and Josh Hawley was going to be out there. Being a North County guy, I'm very much into that whole crazy story of the pollution of all the radioactive stuff that was spread all over North County and St. Charles County as well too, out there in the Weldon Spring area. I think it's a terrible situation. I mean, I'm no fan of Josh Hawley, but I'm with Hawley 100%. He keeps trying to get this money for the cleanup, and what do we get? We get signs. Isn't that what the story you had like 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's good. Well, that way you know, Brad. I mean, and here's the thing. Better late than never. I mean, they should have been up, let's say, in the 50s and 60s. But you know what? It's only 2024.
Yeah,
they just missed it by a few years.
Right, few years. Yeah, this happened. This happened in the early to mid 40s, and here it is, 2024. So we're talking 80 years ago, and they still haven't cleaned up the mess. But no, I'm going to play it down the middle. I'm not voting anymore. So don't ask me who I'm going to vote for because my answer is going to be nobody because I'm not going to vote.
All right, Brad. I will not ask you today after the election.
Because quite honestly, I've heard on NPR. A matter of fact, I don't know if I told you this over the weekend. I heard that on NPR when you go to the polls now, not only do you have to show them a photo ID, which some people find problematic, they're asking both men and women when their menstrual cycle is. And
yes.
After I heard that on NPR, and I thought to myself, well, this is NPR. It's got to be the truth. They're tracking women's menstrual cycles in the state of Missouri. Not that. And Jay Ashcroft has come out and essentially said, yes, that's one of our new requirements. Secretary of State, we don't care if you're a man or a woman. We have to have your menstrual cycle in order to vote in the state of Missouri. Is this getting goofy or what? Okay.
Yep. Go ahead, Brad.
Number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Good news or bad news for 3 Republican senators, I guess, depending on how you look at it, Brad. Do you remember the Kansas City Chiefs parade shooting from a few months ago, Brad?
Oh, it was over a year ago, wasn't it?
Well, I guess it would have been back in February, I assume.
Yeah, okay.
So that
earlier this year.
Yeah, right after. So I guess more than a few months ago.
Right.
But 3 Republican senators had either retweeted or reshared, information that had been posted on Twitter about a gentleman who had been photographed in handcuffs. And these 3 Republican senators either reshared or shared on their own images of this gentleman, suggesting that he was an illegal alien. Now, this gentleman has sued for mental distress, loss of sleep, general being harassed, things like this, just damages. So this gentleman filed the case. Curiously, Brad, he lives in Kansas, so he lives over the state line in Johnson County, Kansas. So he filed suit against these 3 state senators in Kansas. Yesterday, the judge found that these 3 Republican state senators from Missouri could not be sued in Kansas court. So for now, it appears to be a victory for these 3 Republican state senators, but the gentleman's attorney claims that they will look to refile the lawsuits in the state of Missouri. So, Brad, more than anything, I think if you were these 3 Republican senators, you would like to have that day back. You'd like to have the opportunity to not jump the gun and reshare this without having all the facts. But we'll see if this actually gets refiled or not.
John, I'm not an attorney and I don't play one on TV, but I would say right off the get-go, I think when I even saw that, I thought to myself, why is he filing in Kansas? Even though he's a resident of Kansas, it was an event that took place in Missouri. The senators are from Missouri. Don't you think the natural inclination would have been to file it in Missouri?
Yeah, I guess so. But I guess his original logic, and again, not an attorney, I guess his original logic is that he lives in Kansas where he was losing sleep and receiving death threats. He was physically in Kansas while this was going on. But you're right. I would have assumed that it would have been a Missouri thing. So we'll see if anything actually comes of this. Now you have Rick Bratton and Nick Schroer, who are returning to the Missouri Senate. You have Denny Hoskins, who will be Secretary of State. So these folks, I think, have a high enough profile that this gentleman, if he wanted to continue to get attention for this, could continue to get headlines as long as he's suing these state senators. So it does underscore, Brad. Again, I can't say it enough. When things like this happen, you got to think before you reshare stuff. And in fact, I remember seeing the original post that showed this guy in handcuffs, and they gave him a fake name. And when I say they, I should say other people on social media, not these 3 Republican state senators. But some of the early social media posts showed this gentleman with dark skin and handcuffs, and they gave him a fake name that had actually been used in other hoaxes throughout the country. It was almost like it was an internet meme. And it's like, man, when you see something like this, you don't have to be the first person to retweet it. You don't have to be the first person to weigh in with some pithy comment about your policy positions. You can just let it play out. You don't have to weigh in right away.
Okay, is that... Can we say the name on the air, or is it a name we can't use on the air?
No, the gentleman's name is Loudermill. His last name is Loudermill.
No, but what was the meme name?
Oh, gosh, I don't know off the top of my head, Brad. It was some name that was curious enough, honestly, that I Googled it and was like, oh yeah, it's a Reddit meme.
I got you. So see, here's the thing. He's got one guy that's not in the Senate anymore. He's only going to be able to do 1 for 3 because everybody knows that Rick Schroer is bulletproof. I mean,
and also his brother Nick Schroer.
What did I say? Rick Schroer?
Rick Schroer. Yeah, he's Rick Schroer's brother.
Nick Schroer. Okay, I'm sorry. And you always get mad at me because I put an I in there.
You said it correctly today. Now you know what's better than spreading internet fights, Brad, and slander and libel would be having a confrontation face to face, and that leads nicely into story number 1.
The number 1.
I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. St. Louis County state lawmaker says Democratic staffer assaulted him at party office. This story brought to us by the Post-Dispatch's Jack Suntrup. Did you happen to see this yet, Brad?
I did not.
Okay, that's great, because I'm going to explain to you what happened. According to Jack Suntrup in the Post-Dispatch, there was a fist fight last week at the St. Louis County Democratic Central Committee's South County office. So there's a South County office where you can go down there. If you're a Democrat, you can phone bank, you can pick up your yard signs, you can take your union break, you can take a nap, you can get some coffee, whatever you got to do. State Representative Michael Burton told the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that he and the gentleman who's the executive director, a guy named Jonathan Bosch, had a disagreement over money, Brad. And apparently Michael Burton had given the county Democrats $1,000 and expected, according to the story, a little grassroots effort, maybe some door knocking, maybe capture some voter data out there. Michael Burton's got a re-election campaign to run. And it appears from this story that Representative Burton did not get the value that he wanted for his $1,000. So guess what happened, Brad? Fisticuffs ensued. Now, the real hubbub, which is not yet covered in the Post-Dispatch, is that apparently, according to social media chatter, across the street, there's a Walgreens that has security cameras. Apparently, the fisticuffs spilled outside, or the argument started inside and the fisticuffs were outside. And some are saying, Brad, that the Walgreens security cameras might have a little bit of footage of the fist fight. So no one at the St. Louis County Democratic Central Committee would offer any kind of official comment, But the St. Louis County Police Department did confirm that officers responded to Grasso Plaza for an altercation. So Michael Burton says, quote, release the security camera footage. If we could get the footage, it would explain the entire thing. Fisticuffs, Brad, among Democrats. Now, you like to point out that Republicans fight a lot, and we sure do fight amongst ourselves. But this is an actual fist fight, Brad.
Well, what's that saying about three things you never want to see being made? Legislation, sausage, and people down in South County trying to duke it out over political aspects. Isn't that what?
Oh my gosh, Brad. Let's get into that, Brad. So, as two boys that grew up in North St. Louis County, we have our own stereotypes about us, right? Like, and I mean, I'm sure you were no angel growing up. I spilled quite a bit of blood at the corner of Larimore and Cordova. I got to learn the taste of my own blood really well. But Brad, could you stereotype South County Democrats more than having some kind of a Hoosier fight at a campaign office? Now, I wasn't there, haven't seen any footage, don't know what happened, but could you be more Hoosier than losing impulse control at a campaign office and having a fist fight?
Man,
like maybe you could take your Busch Light cans and throw them at each other. Or you could spit a little skull in the guy's face. Or maybe you could tell him that he didn't do a good enough job spot welding your Trans Am in the front yard while you're wearing a wife beater. Could you be more Hoosier than this, Brad?
To me, it's just sort of crazy. And the whole thing was he didn't think he got his money's worth. Was that the whole bottom line of the situation?
That's true. Now, to be fair, if you give $1,000 to a party central committee, you're not going to get it. Like, that'll get you a day or two of door to door. Like, so I don't know. I'm not taking sides in this, Brad, because I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just saying, if you're Michael Burton and you give $1,000 to the county committee, you should expect to get good data back, and you should expect to get some tangible numbers. But apparently, and it sounds very much like this Bosch guy. According to Burton, Bosch was dodging him, and Burton wanted to get his phone calls returned, so maybe he went and saw him in person. Again, I don't know the facts, Brad. I'm speculating. But here's the thing. From story number 2, if you're a Republican, stop sharing stuff before you have the facts. If you're a Democrat and you're in South County, stop being a Hoosier. Like, have a little impulse control. Why are you fighting in public?
I don't quite understand. Politics has gotten to the point where, you and I talked about this before, and Armstrong and Getty have covered this immensely, that you go back 30, 40, 50 years, that people, that like he told the story about his son who's in high school would say, well, that girl won't date me because she knows I'm conservative. I mean, did you ever, like when you were in high school, did you even know what somebody's political beliefs were? I mean, did that?
Yeah, and I think of the one girl in particular that was very upset that I loved Bob Dole's tax plan, and she was more of a Keynesian economic person at Hazelwood East, and I was more of a supply sider. And she was like, John, if you believe in supply side economics, like, I don't know, get your hands off my bra class,
This whole thing.
And I'm like, I can do it with one hand, but I don't know. I was 16. What did I know?
Okay, John, showing off his one-handed aspect there. Okay, we have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?